I've got problems.
So if you love everything gardening with a tropical twist, then you're in the right place. So I aim to upload 2 to 3 times a week. So without further ado, let's get into this B&M Garden Centre review and my thoughts on it with another bargain. Sounds a lot, didn't it? Let's get into it. Now, in order for me to give B&M the Garden Centre part an honest review, I thought I needed to visit more than just one, because the first experience I had with actually visiting these garden centres weren't great, right? Although the quality of the plants I thought originally was extremely good, it was just simply the care that wasn't. But in this video, I actually did a little bit more digging. I actually spoke to a couple of the guys who worked in these garden centres, and my issue was never with them, but genuinely I think the issue lies a lot further up. So before I get into that and the chats that I've had today, I'm going to show you some more bargains that I've got, and one that I am extremely happy with. So the last visit I actually picked up my Ensete, this red banana, for just £12.50, but I've absolutely trumped that today with this buy. A sikkimensis, also known as the Bengal tiger banana. Now, I did think about having this, I'm not going to lie, but I was never going to turn it down for £4. Now, it was a really interesting one, why it was £4, and I had a really good chat with the guy. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go through some details of what I was told today. And it is really interesting, and like I've said previous, it doesn't lie with the operator or the guy who actually takes care of the plants. I think it's a lot further up. Now, this was in my third store that I visited, and it's actually the same store as my original sort of review when I did my online versus B&M, right? So I'm not going to lie to you, all three stores were pretty much the same. Extremely poor when it comes to sort of caring for the plants, and also the plants that they had ranging in were actually quite different. There was hardly any tropical style plants in the first two stores that I actually visited, compared to the third store, which is the original one, which had these, which were featured again, but they weren't £4, they were £12.50. So as I walked into the third store, I met this really sort of young man. He was dead polite, and he said to me, "Oh, can I help you with anything?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just come to have a look at the bananas." So he knew exactly what the banana was straight away. And I know that sounds quite I'm not judging him by any sense of the imagination, but I named a plant, right? And he knew it. So straight away, he's obviously cares about what he does. But so I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for the bananas. See if you've got any bananas left." And he says, "Oh yeah, we've got 4 or 5, but they're looking a little bit wilted, so I can do you a bit of a discount on that, right?" So I said, "Oh yeah, no, brilliant." I said, "So what we're talking?" He said, "Oh, I'll do them for about £4. I'm going to sell them off for about £4 each." So I said, "Can I ask the reason why? Can I ask why they're being reduced?" Now, I think we all know the reason why they're being reduced, but I kind of wanted to hear it from them. I kind of wanted to understand what their sort of ethos was on it, what was driving sort of some of the decisions and things like that. And it was really helpful. And probably by the end of it, you probably thought, like, what's this guy going on about? Because I asked like 101 questions. I'm not going to go through them all today, and some of that conversation will always remain with myself and him. But there's a couple of things I do want to share with you, which I found quite interesting. So he said, the main reason why I reduced the plants is when they're wilting. So he's had the go-ahead to, if plants wilt, whether that be through sort of drought or the sun, because it is a really sunny position that these plants were actually in with no shade, then he's allowed to reduce them based upon the fact that they're wilting. So nothing else, nothing to do with damaged, diseased, or all that sort of good stuff, the 3Ds. It's purely down to the plants being too dry, right? So I said, so that led me on to sort of saying, all right, so what what does the watering look like for you? It must be, I said, it must be quite difficult to kind of keep on track because he's got hundreds of plants, right? So he said, yeah, it's come from higher management that they were to water twice a day. And I thought, well, that's great. Like that's kind of what it needs at the minute, middle of July, right? So some of the care of the plants that you see is quite questionable. But this banana hadn't been watered since I think I last saw it. It's absolutely bone dry. And obviously the material is quite like a cocoa cure. So it's really almost too dry, if you like. So it's actually taking quite a bit to sort of rehydrate it. Now, so the management said twice a day. So at the moment it's come from higher management. So we're going to water it twice a day. And I was like, that's really smart. I said, so my next question was, and I wasn't meaning to ask these questions, but I'm really intrigued in this particular sort of situation. And the reason why I'm so intrigued is I actually used to be head of department at the Trentham Garden Centre. So I used to run the seasonal plant area. So I knew a little bit about it, although I've come out the sector now. These sort of things still sort of sit with me. And the guy was really cool, to be fair, really nice lad. And so my next question was, so like what sort of time should you do the watering? So I used to work for the Diamond Group, and we would always water early morning of an evening, and we'd always sort of open up late, which I understand B&M can be a little bit different, but I wondered if they just catered for this, because obviously due to evaporation in midday, you're not gonna be able to water up quite as well, right? So and that was, I think, one of the big issues. So his shift always ran from 11 till 5. So that area of sort of getting your water down and it sort of staying down and the mat staying wet was actually quite limited, right? So in the middle of the day when it's baking hot, some of that water, not all of that water, but some of that water isn't going anywhere near the plants. It's going to get evaporated before it even goes on. Right, so I thought that was quite an interesting thing. This guy, he's quite a young lad, 18, runs the area pretty much on his own. So my next question was, so obviously you get a few casualties. What kind of happens with them? And he said he writes off quite a lot due to the weather and stuff like that. I won't say how many, but then I said, so is it like an automated ordering service, or do you do the ordering? So he ordered the aggregates and things like that, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's a lot of responsibility for quite a young lad, I'll be honest. But the plants are on sort of an automatic feed, if you like, so they just come in as and when. Now he's only part-time, and he's the sole guy who's running the department, right, or taking care of running and taking care of the department, and he's the only one, and he only does 30 hours a week, and therefore them hours are based between sort of 11 and 5. So you can understand what he's up against, right? And it's no one's fault. We get a bargain from it, so I'm not complaining in the slightest, but I just had to understand how did they get into this kind of, how do the plants really look like this? Because I think as much as we love a bargain, we don't want to see the plants, heading to the skip. We would much rather support B&M and pay the full price, right? Because the prices of them are fantastic anyway. So I hope this sort of review and this sort of chat with you guys is coming across that way, because I'm not judging him, but there's a few things I thought they could slightly change. So one of which was no shade, so a shaded area within the plant garden centre would go a long way. It would help with some of the casualties that they're having. Also, the trolleys were slanted on the bays, so they were like that, so the water will never quite sit in it as a well. So the guy's watering it and it's going straight off and dropping down. So maybe that's something, that would help a little bit. And certainly watering in the morning or night would go a long way for it actually going somewhere. But mentioning no names and mentioning no areas and things like that. But I will say, the one thing I will say is this young lad was really cool. And although you could tell he wasn't an expert, and I'm not knocking him in any way, he made up for it in enthusiasm because I thought his attitude was spot on. It was really like brilliant. I was just a little bit sad to sort of hear him say a few things about where the plants go and things like that when things don't always go to plan. Right, but I'm not knocking them. I think B&M, the quality of the plants they order is fantastic, but I think they may need to make a couple of changes higher up when it comes to the plant stores. The one thing I did notice is when you walk out into the areas, and please let me know down below, when you walk out to the areas, the plant sale aisles hit you in the face as soon as you walk in. Now, I don't know about you guys, and let me know, but it almost turns you off a little bit. I understand people go to the plant sale area, but maybe on the aisles of when you just walk into certain stores, you want to be hit in the face with like, wow, what have you got? These are great, or block colours and things like that, obviously to make you sell, but that's, you know, that's a different story. So the background on that for me, as I'm always thinking about that sort of thing, because I know the Diamond Group, who I used to work for, they have gardens at Chelsea and things like that. So, but it was a bit snobbish for me, as you can tell. I'm a little bit more rough and ready. But that's it. Another fantastic bargain. I'm sorry about the rambling, but it was really interesting. I could have talked to this lad for ages, to be honest, and he's a credit to him. To be honest, it's not his fault that this particular store ends up like that, but maybe a few sort of tweaks from higher management, and you know, I think they'd get a lot more business, to be honest. I genuinely do, but maybe that's for another video. So if you did enjoy it, I'm sorry about the ramblings, but I find this really quite an interesting topic. So if you did enjoy it, then please give it a big thumbs up, as it really does help the channel out. Drop a comment down below, as it helps share it out to others who love gardening just like we do. But until next time, we'll see you in the garden. You take care, guys.